So all lines curvilinear. Next law. All the lines radiate from the previous lines. In some of your mind maps on yourself, many of you had lines with nothing on them, and then words hanging off the end. Why? Why not put those words on the lines, which is where they should be? Because then each word is underlined and supported and associated. So all the advantages that your brain needs. Another law, words on the line. And you don't have to write them upside down. Many of you had some words upside down because you were rotating your note. So you need to do, advanced yoga to read your notes. Whereas if the branch is going down like that, you don't have to write the word underneath it, you write it on top of it. It makes it much easier to read. Another law is one idea per line. One idea per line. And that idea, or when you do that, it gives you much more freedom. So if you were doing a mind map on today's seminar, and you had a brain in the middle, a mind map in the middle, whatever it was, and you wanted to mention that Tony Buzan was the main presenter, you would have a branch, and what would you put on that branch? Would you put Tony Buzan? No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You'd put Buzan and then Tony. Exactly. Because it then gives you more options. If you write Tony Buzan, Buzan's trapped. But if you write Buzan, Tony, you've still got Tony Buzan. But what other kind of Buzans can you add? Dad Buzan, Mum Buzan, Brother Buzan, Uncle Buzan, Grandpa Buzan. The history of the name Buzan. So when you put one word per line, you explode the freedom of that mind map. Phrases seem like a good idea, but they're not. Because if you break the phrase into its component parts, you still have the phrase, and you have the freedom. Yes, one idea in a keyword. And if it's a group of ideas, then you connect those keywords individually, like Buzan, Tony. So the mind map actually gives you the main thing you need, and that is freedom. Freedom. It gives your thinking total freedom. And we're going to use that model and those laws to create mind maps ourselves. I want you to be thinking of your final version curriculum vitae. Because in the next session, we'll do a mind map on you, where your first exercise this morning will be your rough draft, but now you'll be able to apply the full thinking power of your brain to you. And this CV will be something you can use for the rest of your life. You can use it to get a promotion, you can use it to explain yourself to people, you can use it to admire yourself. That amazing thing there is me. And as you will increasingly see, you are even more amazing than you think. Okay, just before the break, we'll do one little test, a memory test, just to stimulate the brain. So if you turn to another page and write down memory test number 1. Memory test number 1. neighbors. We don't want to find out what the group knows. We want to find out what your brain knows in this particular area. And then we'll discuss it. So the test is on the planets of our solar system. Now, we know that your brain has been connected with this information for between 5 hours and 5 days of your life. So all I want you to write down on the page, on your own, is the planets of our solar system in order from the sun out. The sun is your central star. So to note this, you have to have the number of the orbit of the planet. So number 1 will be the closest planet, and then its name. Write down number 2, which is the second orbit. 3, the third orbit. 4, fourth, and so on until you've finished. You get 1 mark for each planet with its numbered orbit and its name, starting now. On your own. Talking to your neighbor has been found to lower your score. And just to help some of you who are already having trouble, Aquarius is not one of them. Don't talk to your neighbors. If you talk to your neighbor, you're going to interfere with their thinking. So each planet numbered and named in its orbit from the sun out. While you're doing this, think about how your brain is doing it or not doing it. Think about how it feels when you get them, how it feels when you don't get them. I said, don't say anything to anybody at any time, which actually meant don't say anything to anybody at any time. Okay, group, you've had enough time to write down about 27 planets, which should be sufficient. And don't worry about your score. The average score on this test around the world is about 1. So hand your pad to your neighbor. Hand your pad to your neighbor. We'll mark it out of 9, 1 point for each planet. Must be numbered, must be named in its correct orbit. So number 1 is Mercury. 1 Mercury, 2 Venus. 3 is us, Earth. So Mercury, Venus, Earth. 4 is Mars. 5, Jupiter. 6, Saturn. 7, Uranus. 8, Neptune. And number 9, Pluto, was recently demoted from planetary status, but it was actually redescribed as a dwarf planet. So it's still a planet, but it's a dwarf planet. So number 9, Pluto. Mark it out of 9, hand it back to your partner. Okay, group. Let's check the results on that. How many of you got 9 on that? 9? Very good. Way, way higher than average as a group. Congratulations. 8, anybody? Good. 7, anyone? Okay. 6, anybody? 5, anyone? Okay. You'll be interested to know that around the world there is normally a direct correlation between the number right and the height of the hand. It's 9, 8, 7, 6. How many of you scored between 0 and 5 inclusive? 0 to 5 inclusive? Well done. Just a couple of questions on that. How many of you are not particularly interested in the planets? Okay. How many of you are not particularly interested in mathematics and physics? Okay, so quite a lot. How many not particularly interested in contemporary art? Okay, how many not particularly interested in Mesopotamian history in the year 4500 BC? Okay, so big majority. How many not particularly interested in the art and science of growing mushrooms in the dark? Okay, so we've got a feel for the areas of not interest. And we're going to come back after the break to a number of really exciting things. We're going to do your mind map on yourself in your new mind map knowledge form. We're going to do a series of explorations on creativity and explore the limits of creativity. We're going to explore the limits of memory and the way in which memory actually works. And we're going to launch that into the applications of mind maps. And we'll have some couple of guest lecturers for you as well. Gautam, you have announcements. No announcements? So break between doing it by hand and doing it by computer. I consider them, like brother and sister or two twins. They are different. The theory is the same, but if you're doing a mind map by hand, you have personal contact. You have muscular memory. You can shade in. So it's helpful in your creative, contemplative thinking. It is relaxing when you do it by hand. It gives you more focus and concentration when you do it by hand. So by hand has its own character and its own advantage. So does the computer. With the software, you can have your mind map and you can eliminate it branch by branch, which means you can create it branch by branch, which means you can test yourself. So what was the branch on the top right-hand side? A few of you have got that? Author. So you know it's author, but what? So with a mind map, you can self-test. And then you think, I forgot the poetry. So you register that, which means that your learning is then enhanced. So the computer allows you to build branch by branch what you have already done. Or again, memorize that little bit and take it off. And memorize it again. Also on the computer software, once you've got your mind map up, you can change any color. So you can change any branch. You can move any branch. Let's say, just for example, that you thought, well, actually, sportsman should be over there on the left. You can just pick it up and plonk it on the left. If you're doing a branch and it's getting cramped, if you're doing it by hand, you're stuck. It's cramped. But if you're doing it on the computer, the software is actually designed to give you more space. So if you were, for example, adding a new branch here and it was getting very cramped, the software would just move the whole